Let us remove it.
Controls must be nearby. Soldiers!
In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And in the mundane reality of the present day, there is only Twitch streamers, video game journalists, and e-celeb influencers, which is exactly what I'm trying not to do. Welcome to another sketch and review, my second one actually. The first one I did was for Alien Romulus, which I really liked a lot. Go check it out. I'll put a link on the bottom. Why not? This time, I thought I'd give my thoughts on Space Marine 2. And as always, this is a drawing channel first, so the focus will be in seeing my art process as I draw an Ultramarine, kind of based on me pausing the game a lot and trying to get a look at their parts. So armor and robotic type things are not my specialty. This was actually kind of tough for me, believe it or not. I'm more of a monster and maiden type erotic horror artist. Lots of exposed muscle, blood, gore, nudity, body horror, and strange creatures. If you've seen my stuff, you know I like to do a lot of demons, devils, succubus, just weird, gory type insect, demon type stuff. So bear that in mind as you see me struggle away with this drawing. It took me about an hour and a half to 2 hours from, blank canvas to finished sketch. But my video recorder stopped before the last little final edit, but I'll still include the final image in the end. It's not that much of a difference, mostly just lighting correction stuff. That's honestly it. Anyway, here's what I thought of Space Marine 2. Instead of waiting till the end of this to give a score, like almost every review site and video out there, I'd prefer to give my verdict up front and explain why I got to that thought. I'm not a huge fan of making people wait for an answer. I also don't like point systems because it really doesn't matter if a game is a perfect 10 or an IGN 7 or a Screen Rant 3 because it lacks diversity and inclusion. It's according to their terrible Black Myth Wukong review, which is a travesty. All that matters, not the game, the game's not a travesty, their review of Black Myth Wukong is a travesty. I just thought I'd make that clear. Black Myth Wukong is fucking awesome. But anyway, for me, making a purchase on a video game or a movie, does anyone even buy movies anymore? All that matters is, should you buy it or not? Really. With Space Marine 2, I'd say yes. This is a definite buy it now. If you're not too familiar with the 40k universe, that's fine, since it does a good job of easing newcomers into the lore by not bombarding you with loads of 40k exposition, and trust me, there's a lot. So even if you don't know jack about 40k, it is one of the funnest shooters I've played in a while. It kind of reminds me a bit of Gears of War 3 specifically, in that the controls are a bit slower and tanky, but very precise and responsive. It doesn't feel like most blitzkrieg speed, super fast twitch, shooters nowadays where you're like on, the minute you turn, there's something there. No, it's a bit more controlled, a bit slower and more methodical, which I really like. I am playing this on the PS5, but honestly, it's only because my wife is hogging the Series X, which I was going to get on the Xbox, in our living room, since she's been on First Descendant pretty much 25 hours a day. And that's another game I might go over since it's pretty fucking addictive and really fun. not to mention the eye candy. And there's nothing wrong with eye candy. Unless you work for Kotaku or IGN, apparently. And speaking of eye candy, Space Marine 2 is a treat to look at. I don't think it really matters what system you get it for, honestly. Like most games these days, it's going to look good regardless. As for performance, I'm not seeing any real issues here. Like, some people said there's bugs, but the only bugs I've seen are hordes of Tyranids, and they swarm me like crazy. The amount of enemies on screen is pretty impressive, but it's nothing I haven't seen in games like Days Gone or Helldivers 2. Unlike Helldivers 2, though, I never felt so overwhelmed that it stopped being fun. That's a trick with Horde-type designs, especially, what was it? Oh, Back for Blood, that's right. I had that on Game Pass, and it became more trouble than it was worth. For Space Marine 2, I think the devs did the World War Z game, which I haven't played but heard was decent. But yeah, the hordes are closer to something out of that game, World War Z, or in my experience, Days Gone, which is a criminally underrated game. Like, here's a hot take, and I'm sure I'll get shit. I liked Days Gone better than either Last of Us games. There, I said it. So, yeah, it definitely keeps you on your toes and has pretty good pacing. The only problem I'd say is that some levels feel like they should have been broken up more. There's one section on the second planet, I think it is, where you have to run up a short ramp type area to get into a giant cathedral. There's like snipers and stuff shooting at you from the top. It says one of the coolest lines ever, where they have the high ground, and then Titus says, "Then we'll take it." Like, damn. All right, fucking take it. But yeah, it seemed to drag a bit once you get inside. Same with the few PvE matches I played. They kind of went on a little bit too long. Like, this isn't something like Helldivers 2 or First Descendant where I can do a quick match before work. Not that it's a huge gripe or anything, but I did find myself saying, like, holy shit, this is still going. Again, not a big deal, but it could have benefited from a little bit better pacing. So, Warhammer 40k lore and the story, for those that actually care about story. Whatever. This picks up right after the events of, you guessed it, the first Space Marine. Now, it's been a while since I played part 1, but I do remember liking it a lot. I have that one on Steam. Otherwise, I actually would get a remaster if they ever remastered it. And it's not just because this came out, but it really was a fun game. In that one, the first one, as well as this, you play as Captain Titus. An all-around ultramarine badass, fueled by a constant drip of creatine, triple scoop protein, and barrels of pure Liver King carnivore-flavored blood shakes. Yeah, this game is about as masculine as watching the first Predator movie in your boxers with a beer, raw steak, and a loaded shotgun. There is nothing subtle or happy or funny in this game, and I love that. I'm not a fan of forced humor, especially in Western games, so it's nice to be able to jump into something I know isn't going to try and pull something out of left field. At the end of Space Marine 1, Captain Titus was accused of heresy. Now I forgot all the details, but something chaos, the warp. The warp, for those that don't know, is how people in the 41st millennium travel through space. And when they use the warp, they literally travel through this chaos hell dimension. And the legions of chaos also use the warp to enter our reality. That's where you get all the crazy, weird, expanded lore that is all of 40k. I am what you would consider a casual fan. I've played all the games from Dawn of War, Fire Warrior, still have my PS2 copy, Inquisitor Martyr, hired gun, and so on. I read Space Marine, the novel, I think it was Rogue Trader. So yeah, I'm familiar with it, games and book wise. I don't have $500,000 to buy a model starter set for Warhammer. Otherwise, I don't need to find another addiction. And I know my wife would be into painting those little figures too. God knows how much money we'd spend. So if I get something wrong, please excuse me and maybe enlighten me in the comments. It'd be nice to interact with some of the fans, for all 12 of you that have subscribed to me. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now, I know with 40k, lore is always changing. Like, recently they added female custodies, but as far as I knew, there never were any. Now, hold on. Not that there's anything wrong with female custodies, but honestly, it was just how it was handled. Just tossing it in there and saying, oh, they've always been there, felt really cheap, especially when Games Workshop was attacking people, I guess, for questioning them. If they would have just said, no, there never were any, but now the Imperium is making them or conscripting them, or however custodies are made. Again, I'm not too familiar. So whatever it is, they're here now, and we can move on now. That would have been fine. Like, okay, cool. Now they've made female custodies. Instead of retconning and saying they've always been there, now we're doing this. It's just how they went about handling it. But yeah, that's just one example. It's been 40k's constant retconning over the years that has made me stay at the sidelines of just being a casual fan. So, in terms of timeline, lore, the overall arc of 40k, I'm not sure where this game fits in. If it even has to fit in, since the 40k universe keeps changing. Now, if you're not too worried about lore, plot, how it fits in, the story itself, as a contained story about Titus, is pretty good. It's not going to win any awards for creative writing itself, but then again, I'm here to shoot shit, not watch a movie. And the shooting shit part is fun as fuck. Still, what story is here is pretty cool, and while it doesn't tell me anything I don't already know about the 40k universe, it at least makes an attempt to not overwhelm and confuse those not familiar with the vast amount of 40k world and universe building. All you need to know is Imperium good, Alien bad. I mean, really, it's basically Aliens, but with space magic. I mean, Space Marines and Xenomorphs to Ultramarines and Xenos. Like, you know what you're getting into. Also, one thing I really loved were the boss fights. They never seemed like bullshit bullet sponges, First Ascendant, and instead relied on you knowing how to properly dodge, parry, and give a follow-up punishment attack with a nice little fatality at the end. Some were frustrating, but nothing I felt was unfair. Now for sound and music, I was actually a little underwhelmed. Let me explain. The music itself, the score is awesome. It's dark, brooding, militaristic, full of swells and huge orchestral crescendos that fit the action perfectly. It's just not mixed all that good. The gunfire seems a little muted, and it lacks that pop that other shooters have when you fire a gun and hit an enemy. Honestly, the trigger feedback on the PS5 controller does a better job at conveying hit markers than the sound did. I'm comparing this to the recently released Astrobot, which I also got. I know, a kid's game, right? It really is the best platformer I've played in years, though. So, anyway, in Astrobot, the sound effects, feedback, music, everything is so crisp and clear that going to Space Marine 2 made me think my stereo settings were off somehow. I played with all the in-game settings, and I think it's just that the sound is so compressed that it's lost a little bit of clarity. It's not terrible, but it was something I did notice. So that's pretty much what I think about Space Marine 2. This year has been one of the best and worst for games in my opinion. Recent games like Stellar Blade, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Helldivers 2, well, or the first 2 months. I liked Rise of the Ronin, and my wife and I are loving First Descendant. I just recently got Black Myth Wukong, Astrobot, Space Marine 2. Those have all been some of my favorite games in recent memory. But we also got stinkers. Oh, the creme de la crap, like Concord, Dustfall, and Star Wars Outlaws. So yeah, this year has been pretty split. I will say Space Marine 2 is up there as one of my favorites, along with Stellar Blade, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and First Descendant. My next review I might actually do for Stellar Blade, even though it came out earlier this year, because with how the industry is going, there's some stuff to talk about, especially seeing as how I'm an erotic and horror artist. I have thoughts on why Stellar Blade is one of the best games this year, and it has nothing to do with jiggle physics or why certain game journalists were freaking out over it because of an attractive female. There's actually more to it than the fake outrage that was surrounding it. Anyway, here's a bit of footage of me playing Space Marine 2 because, well, video game reviews need video game footage. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.
The Emperor's wrath!